Hi, today we are going to talk about EU conformity assessment of uncommon product configurations. The presentation will cover different ways a manufacturer can structure their products if they consist of multiple parts. Besides just declaring it as one medical device, there are other options like simply selling them as in one transaction, or if some parts are interchangeable, defining a configurable medical devices. In some cases, declaring the whole offering as a procedure pack or system is the right way to go. For certain devices, splitting out some of these parts as accessories, spare parts, or components might be necessary or beneficial, and we are going to talk about the different cases. Finally, we'll do an overview to compare the pros and cons of each solution. The presentation will include devices that have multiple elements. It will include both hardware and software devices. We will consider commercial considerations because sometimes these are impacting the manufacturers as well. And we are going to take a look at the impact on the different conformity assessments. However, during this presentation, we are not going to talk about devices of single-piece medical devices. For example, whether it's a device in itself, whether it's an accessory, or whether the device fall under other regulations as well as a borderline device. We will also not talk about healthcare institutes as manufacturers, and we will also not talk about devices that are used in commercial healthcare services. And we will also not look at other administrative considerations, UDI, UDOMED registrations, and the impact on EU economic operators, even though the way the devices are structured will have an impact on all of these aspects. So the simplest solution is to define a multi-piece device as one medical device. And this medical device can include other CE-marked medical devices, including accessories, and can also include non-medical items like a generic AA battery to drive the device. If all the parts of the device have the same number of uses, even if the duration is different, it is sometimes beneficial, or the simplest case is to declare the whole set as one device and perform the conformity assessment according to the MDR Article 52. It simplifies the administration for the device throughout its whole life cycle. The second option that is not often understood by manufacturers is that they can simply sell these different pieces separately or sell it together in one sales transaction, one order fulfillment without any special additional paperwork. So if the devices or the different pieces are eligible to be placed on the EU market separately, they can also be placed on the market together. And this is what we just call commercial bundling. This is not sanctioned by any regulatory requirements by enforcing compatibility, for example, and can be an easy solution for a starter pack or a capital equipment with the first one or more sets of consumables. And this is such an easy way that manufacturers should really consider this to be the baseline approach for any device that has multiple parts, unless some other restrictions apply, which we are going to talk about later. Medical devices can be specified to be configurable, to yield a configurable medical device. And so this is an alternative to commercial bundling for known finite permutations of compatible parts, including hardware and software as applicable, in which case the device can be safely and effectively performed and intended. The customer often does not get all the configurable alternatives, only what is suitable for their use. So if we are thinking about a DICOM viewer, which can do studies for both oncology and trauma, for example, we can, and the manufacturer or the end user only needs the oncology pack, they can order a configuration just for that, and they may get a better price compared to buying the whole suite of studies that some of which they don't need. This equally applies to hardware devices as well. So we can see an ultrasound device with different probes, and depending on the use of the end user, they may only order certain configurations, and sometimes different parts of the device need to be configured together for the device as a whole to work as intended. So sometimes software needs to be configured and hardware accessories or hardware parts need to be configured as well. If these parts are interchangeable on the field, alternative configuration parts, subassemblies, would need to be declared as accessories. We are going to talk about accessories in a later slide. So if the number of uses are different, for example, some parts are reusable, but other parts are single use, or we can consider them consumables or disposable parts, it is worth considering splitting out the consumables as accessories and perform a conformity assessment. Separate CE-marked accessories are easier to import and put to the market in the EU. In this case, the conformity assessment would include the accessory as one product and the device, which is a capital equipment, plus the CE-marked accessory as a component as a second product. This might make sense, but obviously it adds to the cost of the conformity assessment if we now have to separately CE mark the capital equipment and the accessory. So this really requires a consideration. Some voices in the industry advise against declaring almost anything an accessory. Others have had good track record of performing conformity assessment for the separate accessories, and it really helps put these products on the market easier. And don't notify bodies really favor this, but ultimately the manufacturer needs to make the decision. For those who consider against declaring accessories and think that the device, if it includes the accessories, have already undergone a conformity assessment, one of the considerations to think about is whether the accessory was only considered in context of the main device, and in that context might be different compared to if the accessory is being sold separately. Some of the obvious differences might be packaging, and this can impact durability of the packaging, shelf life, and the associated studies, which may not have been looked at in the context of the original conformity assessment when the accessory was already maybe attached or installed into the main device compared to when it will be shipped and sold separately to the EU. Reusable medical devices, as specified by the legal manufacturer in the technical documentation, may require spare parts or components. So typically these are reusable devices that need maintenance or certain parts will wear out. The manufacturer may predefine preventive maintenance parts, for example, an O-ring that needs to be replaced every certain period of time as part of the service or maintenance program, but any part that can fail and the replacement parts can be considered spare parts according to the MDR Article 23. These parts may or may not be medical devices, accessories, or non-medical devices on their own, and these can be hardware or software or both. It is important to point out that a part can only be considered a spare part or a component if they are not significantly changing the device. And the definition of what does it mean a significant change are defined in Article 23. If we change something in a device that a part that would alter the clinical intended use or the risk profile or certain other defined restrictions, then the whole configuration should be considered a new medical device and a separate conformity assessment needs to be performed. Procedure packs are combinations of products which may contain already CE marked Class 1 through Class 3 medical devices and other products, which are packaged together and placed on the market with the purpose of being used for a specific medical purpose. For example, think about a first aid kit or a surgery kit, including assortment of implants and compatible instruments. There are some practical uses of defining procedure packs or groups of products into a procedure pack. Optionally, it may simplify the administration where besides a commercial bundling, the parts are also packaged together and the configuration in the procedure pack are static, which means they rarely change. The definition of procedure pack may also be mandatory, at least it's the feasible solution compared to defining the configuration as a separate device per Article 52, especially when the procedure pack contains Class 3 products. When a manufacturer sterilizes a procedure pack that includes non-sterile parts, in which case the notified body, which may be a different one that performed the conformity assessment for the parts, is involved only to assess the sterility aspects. It requires a separate declaration of conformity label, which does not have a separate CE mark. If commercial bundling is sufficient, there is usually little benefit to declaring these parts as procedure pack. For example, for software with the different CE mark modules. Systems are similar to procedure packs, with the difference that the parts thereof do not need to be packed together. There are some practical examples, like an X-ray installation that is visible on the picture, which can include some medical devices and accessories like the X-ray generator, the collimator, the tube, and some non-medical devices, for example, the support beams for ceiling mounting. There are, similar to the procedure pack, the benefits are simplified paperwork. It is easier to import the non-CE mark parts to the EU if they belong to a declared system. For static configurations, otherwise it has little benefit over the commercial bundling. It should be noted that some devices have the word system in their commercial name, which does not make them sanctioned under the MDR Article 22. The notified body may ask the manufacturer to clarify this during the conformity assessment application or during the TD review process. Finally, a product structure overview. So here we can see the different solutions that we have discussed so far. So we can see that if we declare everything as one device without configurations, the benefit is that it can consist of any item, non-CE marked and non-medical devices as well, and it simplifies the administration. The limitation is that it is very sensitive to change and potentially problematic to import consumable parts. If we have one configurable device, it is pretty much the same as the regular device, but it can handle known permutations of parts and subsystems. And similarly, the limitations are the same as for a device, including it having a more complex technical documentation and technical documentation review sampling. When we talked about commercial bundling, basically it requires no additional consideration, can handle any combination of items, including ad hoc configurations. The limitation is that only devices that can already be placed on the market legally can be included. For example, already CE mark devices and accessories. When we declare something as device plus separate accessory, the benefit is that the single-use accessories can be easily imported. And I would also add that the conformity assessment might be more precise because we can look at the accessories on their own right more thoroughly. The limitation is the additional conformity assessment process for accessories, which is additional cost and time. We talked about spare parts and components. So the good news is that they don't require separate conformity assessment process. They don't even require their own CE marking, but it can only be used for those spare parts and components which do not significantly change the device. We talked about procedure packs for non-sterile devices and systems. So in general case, these offer simplified administration of selling related items, and it doesn't require additional conformity assessment process. The limitation is that the included medical devices have to be CE marked and used within the original intended use, and additional administration is needed over the commercial bundling. For example, it requires a declaration of conformity. If we are talking about procedure pack that is sterilized, basically this is the same benefit of non-sterile procedure pack, but it can also handle sterilization of non-sterile products in the procedure pack. And the limitation is, again, similar to a non-sterile procedure pack, and a notified body conformity assessment process is needed for the sterilization. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Please look for me in the booth.